Welcome back. This is Richard Golson again. We're taking a look at NetLab 13, configuring vSAN data store. So we're at the last major step in building our vSAN cluster, and this is where we actually configure the cluster. So we've set everything up. Now we get to configure the cluster. So let's go ahead and take care of that now. So first of all, we'll go ahead and move ourselves in the navigator pane to the hosts and clusters object. And then what we will do is click and drag each host in turn into the cluster. So we'll click and drag SA ESXi 01 to the lab cluster. So I'll select it and drag it. And you'll see it drops in there. It also exposes all the virtual machines that are hosted on that. Make it a little easier. I'll close the lab cluster. Select the next host. Drag it in. One more time. Right. So now we have all of our hosts in the cluster. Our next step is to configure the vSAN cluster. So with the cluster selected, in the main panel, we'll select Configure. And you'll notice that down the side here we have services, configuration. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and close some of these up just to make it a little easier. And if we come down here, you can see that we have vSAN right here. So I'll select the services. Now, in some cases, services vSAN, the vSAN node here might not display. If that's the case, it's pretty easy to get it to come back. Log out of the vSphere client, then log back in under the same account, and that should expose that section. But we got it to show up, so we're good to go here. So as you probably figured out, what we need to do is click on the Configure button here. And this opens the Configure vSAN panel. In this panel, you'll see that there are essentially 5 steps, really just 4, and we're going to walk through each of those. On this first tab, the configuration type, this is where we select the vSAN configuration. Note that single site cluster is selected by default, and we're going to go with that. Okay, having hit the next button, we're now on the services screen. So you can see that there are several services that we could enable, including deduplication, which helps reduce the actual storage that's used by removing duplicate data. That does cost some overhead in processing. So we're going to leave all of this alone, and we'll just hit next. Now, here's where the real work begins, because what we're going to do in this window here is claim the disks that are going to be used to make up our vSAN data store. And so in order to do this, we first need to expand the VMware virtual disk window here. And so we have 5 GB disks we're going to be working with. And so let's take a look at how we're going to set this up. Note that on claim disks, on hosts, we're going to be determining which disk will be used for caching and which disk will be used for actual capacity. And in order to do this, currently every disk is designated as for drive type as HDD. And so what we need to do here is modify this by clicking on the disk drive type and select Mark as Flash Disks. And there we go. Now that we've done that, we'll be able to claim some disks for cache and the other disks for capacity. And what we're going to do is on each host, we will mark one as cache and one as capacity. And so let's take a look at here. So we can see that we have ESXi host 2, which has 2 disks. And so the first one we'll select as cache, and the next one we'll select as capacity. And then we're just going to do this for the rest of the hosts. Again, cache again, capacity, and then finish up on these two here, doing the same thing, just repeating the steps. All right, notice that configuration shows as correct. We can see that our capacity, our claimed capacity, is now at 15 gigabytes. Claimed cache is 15 gigabytes. No unclaimed storage, so we used it all. Let's go ahead and click next here. On this one, we're creating fault domains or defining the fault domains for each host. Basically, when you define fault domains for hosts, you're defining which hosts can fail together. We only have 3 hosts, so with the current configuration, we can tolerate 1 host failure. And so if we had more hosts, then this would give us more tolerance for failures, but we've only got the 3. So we'll go ahead and click next. And so if we take a look at the configuration type, we see that we have a single site cluster. We haven't enabled any of those additional services. We've claimed disks in an all flash disk groups. We have total vSAN data store capacity of 15 gigabytes, 15 gigabytes of caching, and we did not configure fault domains in witness hosts, so we'll hit the finish. And what we will find is it'll take a few moments to build this out. If we take a look here, you can see that it's working on it now. We'll go ahead and pause this and take a look at it when it's done. Okay, welcome back. You can see now that all our tasks are complete, and there are quite a few, adding disks to the vSAN cluster and marking the disks as flash disks, etc. And we can see that everything has been completed. So we're good to go. This task is done. So at this point, we will want to log out of our vSphere client. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. And we're going to log back in as a vSAN admin. So we'll take care of that in our next video. So we'll see you then when we go ahead and license our new vSAN cluster. All right, I'll see you in the next video.